Caitlin, it absolutely defies common sense and credibility. What Justice Alito is doing, in fact, is dragging down the credibility of the court, destroying American people's trust in the court by these kinds of flimsy excuses that fail to pass the red face test. And in fact, what these flag-flying incidents show are political statements, and they're part of a pattern by Justice Alito, and the reason that he should disqualify himself, recuse, and take himself out of decisions involving Donald Trump. He says that he's not required, and there isn't a law that requires it because the Supreme Court has no code of ethics. Alone among all the branches of government and all the judges, except for the United States Supreme Court, he and the highest court in the land really are required to obey only the lowest standards that they apply to themselves. So there is no enforceable code of conduct. I've urged that there be a inspector general for the judicial conference. I've urged that there be an enforceable code of conduct. Obviously, Republicans would have to cooperate in these kinds of efforts, but I think the time has come for the Chief Justice of the court. Roberts has a responsibility here to show some spine and step into the breach. I think he ought to use his moral and political force on the court and take actions that may seem symbolic, like refusing to assign opinions to Justice Alito and Justice Thomas. He has the power, when he's in the majority, which happened 86% of the time during the last session, to deny them the opportunity to do the majority opinion, even if they're in the majority. He should also take away from them their power over specific circuits of the court, geographic areas that all the justices divide among themselves. Those kinds of steps may seem small, but they would send a very powerful message about his disapproval and his showing some leadership here. And I think the United States Congress ought to call the Chief Justice before this Judiciary Committee. I think that we in the Senate ought to hear an explanation from him. I think he owes it to Congress and to the American people.
Well, will you urge your colleagues on the Senate Judiciary Committee to do so?
I've urged them, and I think we need to put the blame where it lies, where it properly should be, for the failure of Congress to do more here. It really belongs to the Republicans, because we know that there isn't a single Republican on the Judiciary Committee who would take any action effectively. But I'm going to urge my colleagues that we should hear from Chief Justice Roberts and that we ought to summon him to appear before us. I have no hope that Justice Alito would even obey a subpoena. Any litigant, and the Department of Justice is a litigant before the court, is reluctant to take that kind of overt action. But we have now entered territory that is so unique and unprecedented. Justice Alito and Justice Thomas are continuing to defile those basic standards and norms of decency and ethics. And I think the time has come for some pretty drastic action, because the American people are losing trust in the Supreme Court. You know, the court has no armies, it has no police force. It depends for the enforceability of its orders on its credibility, and it is rapidly squandering it by failing to act here. The Chief Justice has an obligation, but the Department of Justice may as well.